When LeBron passes up Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in points, and he will this year, will that make him the greatest player ever? Okay. An interesting question. I think the greatest player is Michael Jordan. Hold on. You said LeBron James the greatest player ever?
Ever.
What about Michael and Kobe? So you just gonna pass Kobe up like that?
I'm gonna pass Kobe up. I'm gonna look at Michael. I'm gonna look at the. I'm gonna look at.
I know it. Patron America.
Yo.
Patron America.
Kobe Bryant couldn't fill, or Michael Jordan fill LeBron's shoes. The impact that he's had with different teammates, different organizations.
Would you be mad at me if I just walked off the show?
You can't leave.
The atmosphere inside Madison Square Garden was already tense when everything suddenly exploded. The Lakers had just suffered a 112-100 defeat to the Knicks, a result that looked like an ordinary regular season loss on the surface. But it quickly became the spark for a much bigger controversy that spread far beyond the final score. Within minutes of the buzzer, social media was flooded with clips of the moment everyone couldn't stop discussing. According to the growing buzz, Shaquille O'Neal confronted LeBron James in the arena tunnel, angrily responding to remarks he believed were disrespectful toward Michael Jordan and the old-school era of basketball. This didn't feel like another television debate or a carefully crafted media headline. It came across as something genuine, emotional, and intensely personal. A classic old-school confrontation that immediately grabbed everyone's attention.
An era yelling back at a new one. Let's set the scene so this isn't just overheated rumor mill.
This wasn't the kind of confrontation designed for television cameras. Witnesses at the arena, including reporters and fans, claimed Shaquille O'Neal was waiting in the tunnel after the loss, standing directly in LeBron James' path as if he had something far more important to address than the final score. Earlier that week, LeBron had discussed the evolution of today's NBA on a podcast, explaining that calf injuries have become the modern version of high ankle sprains because of how much the game has changed. Those comments didn't sit well with many former players who grew up in a different era. The podcast clip spread rapidly across social media, fueling heated debates everywhere. For Shaq, it became the perfect opportunity to challenge LeBron's perspective and step into the conversation.
I'm gonna say one thing to you, Max. I don't know the numbers like you do. Michael Jordan is what in the finals? 6 and what?
Oh.
And what is LeBron in the finals? That's all I gotta say.
Shaq, how many games?
Here's the angle that isn't getting enough attention. This controversy goes far beyond a single comment. It's really about legacy, perspective, and what these two basketball icons stand for. Shaquille O'Neal isn't upset because LeBron James embraces social media or openly supports load management. What bothers him is the belief that LeBron's remarks unintentionally minimize the physical battles that shaped the NBA during Shaq's era. The hard fouls, constant trash talk, and relentless physicality weren't just part of the game, they were the environment that created legends. To Shaq, Michael Jordan represented much more than championships and incredible statistics. He embodied a mindset so ruthless that opponents entered games already questioning whether they could survive the challenge. So when today's game is described as tougher, or when modern endurance is presented as a greater test than what previous generations faced, Shaq sees it as rewriting basketball history. From his perspective, that's not simply offering a different opinion, it's overlooking the sacrifices that defined an entire era. To understand why this debate has become so heated, it's worth looking closely at what was actually said and comparing it with the reality behind those claims. Once the emotion is stripped away, the discussion becomes less about personalities and more about whether adapting to a faster game is truly harder than surviving one built on physical intimidation. LeBron's argument during the podcast was fairly direct. He explained that today's NBA is built around greater spacing, faster pace, and constant movement, making soft tissue injuries, especially calf strains, far more significant than they once were. From the standpoint of modern sports science and performance data, that viewpoint carries legitimate support. However, Shaq and many former stars interpreted the message differently. To them, it sounded like another attempt to redefine what toughness means, one that risks minimizing the punishment and resilience required in previous generations. Shaq's response is just as straightforward. He believes fear once played a massive role in basketball, and it couldn't simply be replaced by career longevity or advanced training methods. Michael Jordan intimidated opponents before the opening tip. Kobe Bryant commanded the same psychological respect with nothing more than his presence and relentless mentality. According to Shaq, LeBron has never inspired that same level of fear among rival teams. That criticism isn't about championship rings or individual awards. It's about presence, intimidation, and the psychological edge that, in Shaq's opinion, separated the greatest competitors from everyone else.
LeBron is about to do something that hasn't been done in a long time, and I think he will move his name up there. But for me, it's always Dr. J and Michael Jordan, Magic and those.
This is where the conversation becomes much more complicated for LeBron. The debate has grown beyond podcasts, television panels, and media rankings. Now it's spreading through locker rooms, barbershops, and private conversations where former players pass their experiences down to the next generation. When Shaquille O'Neal suggests that today's biggest superstar often feels more like an entertainer, with carefully planned pre-game routines and constant attention to branding, he's questioning something much bigger than basketball ability. He's challenging LeBron's credibility among veterans who came up in an era where respect was earned through physical battles every single night. Those same veterans are the ones who tell younger players which opponents they genuinely feared facing on an ordinary Tuesday evening. If the widely shared tunnel footage truly reflects the confrontation people believe happened, its impact could resonate inside NBA circles far more than any explanation offered in a press conference the next day. Looking at the historical context helps explain why Shaq continues returning to this argument. He believes previous generations competed under rules that allowed a level of physical contact that would rarely be accepted in today's NBA. Hand-checking, harder fouls with fewer penalties, and a culture built around intimidation weren't just memorable parts of the game, they shaped how players trained, competed through injuries, and ultimately defined their careers. Shaq's point is that comparing different eras by simply counting games played or seasons completed ignores the relentless punishment players once absorbed on a nightly basis. That physical grind may have shortened careers, but in his view, it also demanded an entirely different level of toughness. Supporters of LeBron see the issue from another perspective. They argue his greatest achievement is his ability to evolve with the league itself. Over the years, he has transformed his conditioning, nutrition, and playing style to remain dominant across multiple basketball eras, building a level of longevity that very few athletes have ever matched. In many ways, both viewpoints contain some truth. The NBA has unquestionably changed, and greatness doesn't have to be measured by only one standard. Still, the heart of Shaq's argument remains the same. If someone claims today's NBA is the tougher environment, they also carry the responsibility of acknowledging and respecting the players who endured the challenges of the previous generation before making that comparison.
When I look at LeBron, he's not what Michael was as a player. He's not even what Kobe Bryant was as a player. So, when you talk about trying to compare Michael's instinct, his ability to take over games, his ability to want to have that last shot.
And demoralize you.
Yes.
And scare the living hell out of you.
LeBron doesn't have that gene.
This is where younger players often misread the situation. They get caught up in fame, media attention, and highlight culture, and start equating visibility with real toughness. Shaquille O'Neal's criticism, whether delivered in a tunnel confrontation or through media appearances, is aimed at a modern NBA culture that sometimes elevates branding over pure competitive edge. From his perspective, the game has shifted into an era where players can become global personalities on social media while still being labeled tough, and he sees that as a dilution of what toughness actually means. That doesn't mean today's athletes don't work harder, train smarter, or invest more in their careers and longevity. They absolutely do. But the core issue Shaq keeps returning to is psychological impact, the so-called fear factor. That late-night acknowledgement among teammates, where they warn each other about the one player who can completely take over a game and break your confidence. In Shaq's view, LeBron James, despite his dominance, physical tools, and historic numbers, never created that same universal sense of intimidation. And that belief is what turns a simple disagreement into something much deeper. So now the question becomes, what happens from here? The situation quickly moves beyond personal pride and into legacy-defining territory. Shaq publicly challenging LeBron strengthens the long-running debate between old-school and modern basketball values. Is greatness defined by peak dominance and fear in critical moments, or by longevity, consistency, and adaptability across different eras? Shaq clearly leans toward the former. LeBron's supporters firmly defend the latter. And the outcome of this debate shapes how future generations will read NBA history, documentaries, and Hall of Fame narratives. If the tunnel moment, especially if the viral clips are accurate, leaves a lasting impression that LeBron's comments crossed a line, then Shaq's response becomes more than just an opinion. It influences how history remembers not only what LeBron accomplished, but how his era viewed the generations before him. That kind of narrative shift doesn't fade with time, it sticks. And then there's the part nobody really discusses, the human and emotional weight behind all of this. Publicly, LeBron is one of the most recognizable athletes on the planet, surrounded by sponsors, influence, and constant media attention. But in a private, face-to-face moment like that tunnel exchange, he's dealing with a Hall of Famer whose Lakers legacy still stands as one of the most dominant chapters in NBA history. For a player like LeBron, who has spent his entire career being framed as someone who changed the league and empowered athletes, being confronted in that setting and told he has disrespected past legends creates a rare moment of psychological tension. At that point, it's no longer about quotes or podcasts, it becomes a question of identity, respect, and perception. Shaq's frustration isn't just about LeBron as an individual. It reflects a broader cultural shift in how the NBA defines respect, toughness, and greatness. That's why this tunnel moment matters, not because it was physical or chaotic, but because it became a visible symbol of a generational clash over what the league values most.
An interesting question. I think the greatest player is Michael Jordan. That's what I think. But
now we reach the final question. What do you actually believe? Are you standing with Shaq's old-school vision of greatness, built on physical dominance, intimidation, and the kind of presence that made opponents hesitate before even stepping on the floor? Or do you align with LeBron's interpretation of modern excellence, where longevity, adaptability, and influence across eras define what it means to be an icon? There's really no middle ground in this debate. Choosing Shaq means believing that toughness, fear, and a hard-nosed competitive identity are the true benchmarks of greatness. Choosing LeBron means accepting that the game has evolved, and that mastering its modern form, across spacing, pace, and years of sustained dominance, is just as meaningful. Either way, this tunnel moment has forced open a conversation that will shape how this generation of stars is remembered. Now the challenge is simple. Take a side and back it up. Point to the film where Jordan or Kobe imposed fear on opponents. Or highlight the long-term dominance LeBron has built across multiple teams and systems. Bring up LeBron's podcast comments on injuries, then contrast them with Shaq's immediate reaction. Let the evidence speak louder than emotion. Because this has moved beyond entertainment. Shaq's response has turned what started as a disagreement into something much larger, a full-scale generational debate about legacy. Games will continue, records will be broken, and statistics will keep accumulating. But moments like a tunnel confrontation between two legends don't disappear from memory easily. So the question remains, are you on Team Fear or Team Mastery? Make your case carefully, because in the court of basketball history, that answer might matter more than people